At 2:47 p.m. on a Tuesday afternoon in the southern Caribbean, the Venezuelan Navy frigate Almirante Brión made the worst tactical decision in modern naval warfare history. From 8,200 yards away, her Soviet-era AK-176 76mm gun swiveled toward the USS Arleigh Burke and opened fire. 3 rounds screamed across the water before anyone could process what was happening. This wasn't a warning shot across the bow. This wasn't a navigation error. This was deliberate hostile fire against a United States Navy destroyer. The Venezuelan captain believed his aging frigate could intimidate American sailors into backing down. He had no idea he'd just picked a fight with a warship specifically designed to handle threats 100 times more sophisticated than anything his ship could throw at it. What followed wasn't a battle, it was a demonstration. A masterclass in exactly why you don't fire on American warships unless you're prepared to become a footnote in naval history. Let's start with what the Venezuelans thought they had. The Almirante Brión is a modified Italian Lupo-class frigate, commissioned in 1980. She displaces 2,500 tons, carries a crew of 185, and on paper represents Venezuela's most capable surface combatant. Her main gun can fire 120 rounds per minute. Her Odomot anti-ship missiles have a range of 60 nautical miles. She's equipped with surface search radar, fire control systems, and enough bravado to make her captain think he could challenge a ship 3 times his size. Here's what he failed to understand. The USS Arleigh Burke isn't just bigger. She's from a different technological generation entirely. She's the lead ship of a class that redefined what destroyers could do. 9,200 tons of displacement. The revolutionary Aegis combat system. SIPY-1D phased array radar that can track over 100 targets simultaneously while guiding dozens of missiles to intercept them. Vertical launch cells loaded with weapons that can strike targets from seabed to satellite altitude. The Burke represents everything modern naval warfare has become. Networked, automated, lethally efficient. And on this particular Tuesday, the Venezuelans were about to get an extremely expensive education in the difference between Cold War surplus and 21st century American naval power. The first round from the Brión fell 200 yards short, throwing up a spectacular column of water off the Burke's port side. The second round came closer, maybe 75 yards. The third round actually passed overhead with an audible crack that sailors on deck would describe later as sounding like God ripping a bedsheet. Inside the Burke's Combat Information Center, the atmosphere transformed instantly. One moment, operators were monitoring routine patrol operations. The next, alarms blared as the ship's defensive systems automatically classified incoming projectiles. Not a drill, not a mistake. Actual hostile fire detected and confirmed. The tactical action officer didn't need to consult a rulebook. The rules of engagement were crystal clear. When fired upon, you have the inherent right to defend yourself. The question wasn't whether to respond. The question was how thoroughly to respond. Captain Sarah Mitchell had commanded the Burke for 14 months. She'd trained for this scenario in simulators, in war games, in endless drills that her crew sometimes grumbled about. None of that mattered now. All that mattered was making the correct decision in the next 30 seconds, because every moment of hesitation gave the Venezuelan frigate another chance to get lucky. Her order was calm, measured, and devastating in its implications. Weapons free, neutralize the threat. What happened next took exactly 4 minutes and 18 seconds from first hostile shot to mission complete. But let's break down those 258 seconds, because they represent a masterclass in modern naval warfare. 2:47:23 p.m. The Burke's SPY-1D radar had been tracking the Brión for the past hour. The moment those first rounds left the Venezuelan gun barrel, the Aegis system didn't just detect them. It calculated their trajectory, predicted their impact points, assessed the threat level, and automatically began cycling through response options. All of this happened in the 1.2 seconds it took the first shell to travel 100 yards. The Combat Information Center crew didn't panic, because panic is what happens when you're surprised. The Aegis system had been feeding them threat assessments on the Brión since she first appeared on radar. They knew her capabilities down to the centimeter. They knew her weapons ranges. They knew her maximum speed. They knew exactly how long it would take her to reload and fire again. Surprise requires ignorance. The Burke's crew had none. 2:47:45 p.m. The Burke's Mark 45 5-inch gun rotated toward the target. This isn't some ancient naval cannon. It's a computer-controlled precision weapon system that can fire 20 rounds per minute out to 13 nautical miles with accuracy measured in meters, not football fields. The fire control system had already calculated wind speed, air density, Earth's rotation, and the precise motion of both ships. The gun wasn't aiming at where the Brión was. It was aiming at where the Brión would be when the rounds arrived. But Captain Mitchell made a different call. The 5-inch gun would work. It would absolutely work. But it would take multiple hits to ensure the frigate was neutralized. And multiple hits meant multiple opportunities for something to go wrong. For the Brión to get off a lucky shot. For debris to hit something critical. For the situation to escalate beyond a simple defensive action into something that would dominate news cycles for weeks. She wanted this ended. Quickly. Definitively. With zero ambiguity about what had just happened. Fire control. Select RIM 66. Single bird. Target main mast. The RIM 66 Standard Missile. Mach 3.5. 90-pound warhead. Originally designed to swat supersonic anti-ship missiles out of the sky at ranges exceeding 90 miles. Using it against a surface target at 8,000 yards was like using a sledgehammer to hang a picture frame. Excessive? Absolutely. Effective? You have no idea. 2:48:03 p.m. Cell 14 of the forward Mark 41 vertical launch system blew its hatch. Exhaust gases vented sideways as the missile rocketed vertically upward on its booster motor. At 300 feet, the booster separated, and the main motor ignited. The Standard tilted over into a shallow ballistic arc, accelerating hard toward Mach 3. The Brión's ancient radar systems never saw it coming. Their fire control was still tracking the Burke, still calculating solutions for their main gun. Their threat warning receivers were designed for the 1980s threat environment. Subsonic anti-ship missiles, torpedo launches. They had nothing that could detect a hypersonic missile diving out of the sky above them. 2:48:17 p.m. Impact. The Standard's radar seeker guided it to within 2 meters of the Brión's main mast structure. The proximity fuse detonated the warhead, 15 feet above the target. 90 pounds of high explosive transformed into a focused blast of superheated fragments traveling at thousands of feet per second. The mast didn't just break, it vaporized. Along with every radar array, every communication antenna, every electronic warfare sensor mounted on it. In 0.03 seconds, the Venezuelan frigate went from a functional warship to a blind, deaf, floating hulk. No radar, no communications, no way to see threats, no way to call for help, no way to coordinate damage control. Nothing. Secondary explosions rippled through the superstructure as electrical systems overloaded and caught fire. Fragments from the mast crashed onto the deck below, punching through thin aluminum plating. The ship's combat information center went dark. Emergency lighting kicked in, but that didn't help when every screen was dead and every system was offline. On the bridge, the Venezuelan captain stared in disbelief at the smoke and flames pouring from what had been his ship's nerve center 3 seconds ago. He'd fired 3 warning shots. The Americans had erased his ability to fight with a single missile that had cost more than his ship's entire annual operating budget. 2:48:29 p.m. The Burke fired a second time. Another Standard missile. This one targeted at the Brión's forward gun mount. Same result. The mounting bracket shattered. The gun barrel twisted 40 degrees off axis. The automated loading system jammed with a round halfway loaded. The weapon that had started this confrontation was now a 4-ton paperweight permanently frozen in position. The message was clear. This wasn't suppressive fire. This wasn't area bombardment. This was surgical dismantlement of every system that made the Brión a warship instead of an expensive yacht. 2:49:11 p.m. The Brión's captain did the only sensible thing left to him. He ordered his ship to turn hard to starboard and increase to maximum speed, running away. The frigate's diesel engines screamed as she worked up to 35 knots, trailing black smoke and leaving a wake like a speedboat. The Burke didn't pursue, didn't need to. The SUPY-1D radar tracked the fleeing vessel with casual precision. Every weapon system remained locked on target. If the Brión turned back, if she showed any indication of renewed hostile intent, the next missile wouldn't target her weapons. It would target her waterline, and that would be the end of the conversation. Captain Mitchell watched the radar track pull away. Her tactical action officer was already on the secure line to Southcom, providing a real-time brief of the engagement. Her weapons officer had reloaded both VLS cells and was running system diagnostics. Her damage control teams were on standby, though the Burke hadn't taken so much as a paint scratch. Maintain tracking. If she turns back toward us, weapons free on hull shots. Otherwise, let her run. The Brión didn't turn back. She kept running at maximum speed until she crossed into Venezuelan territorial waters 47 minutes later. The Burke's radar watched every mile of that retreat. Now let's talk about what this engagement actually cost. Venezuela launched 3 rounds of 76mm ammunition, value approximately $450. They lost their frigate's entire sensor suite, main gun, and probably 6 months of repair time in dry dock. Estimated repair cost, $12 million. Assuming they can even source replacement parts for 40-year-old Italian systems. The United States fired 2 RUM-66 Standard missiles. Cost, $1.8 million each. Total expenditure, $3.6 million to completely neutralize a hostile warship without killing a single sailor or risking American lives. In the cold calculus of military accounting, that's a bargain. But the real cost to Venezuela was strategic. Within 6 hours, the entire incident had been documented, analyzed, and distributed throughout the U.S. intelligence community. Every naval power in the Western Hemisphere now knew that Venezuelan surface combatants had opened fire on American ships. The diplomatic fallout would take months to settle. International shipping insurance rates for Venezuelan ports spiked immediately. Every nation that had been considering defense cooperation with Caracas suddenly remembered prior commitments elsewhere. The Brión's captain had wanted to make a statement. He succeeded. The statement was that Venezuela's Navy had learned absolutely nothing from history. You don't pick fights with Aegis destroyers. You don't challenge American warships in international waters. And you definitely don't fire first unless you're prepared to sail home in pieces. The Burke continued her patrol. Her crew ate dinner at normal hours. The incident was logged in exacting detail with timestamps, radar tracks, and video footage from 6 different angles. Within 24 hours, the analysis brief was sitting on desks in the Pentagon, providing yet another data point in the long history of why American naval superiority isn't just about having more ships. It's about having better ships, better training, better systems, and the institutional discipline to use overwhelming force with surgical precision. 3 days later, Venezuelan state media released a statement claiming their frigate had heroically defended national waters against American aggression. They showed footage of the Brión returning to port, carefully edited to avoid showing the twisted wreckage where her mast used to be, or the scorched paint where her main gun had been mounted. The US Navy didn't bother releasing their own footage. Didn't need to. Every intelligence service in the hemisphere had already received the full tactical brief through back channels. The message was clear without saying a word publicly. This is how modern naval power works. Not through prolonged battles or dramatic fleet actions, but through overwhelming technological advantage applied with absolute precision. The Brión fired first. The Burke fired last. And the difference between those 2 moments was the gap between Cold War maritime thinking and 21st century network-centric warfare. Some lessons are learned through training exercises and diplomatic negotiations. Others are learned by firing on a warship whose capabilities you fundamentally misunderstood. The Venezuelan Navy learned their lesson in 258 seconds. Whether they remember it is a different question entirely. But here's what every naval officer worldwide took away from this encounter. Aegis destroyers don't bluff. They don't posture. They don't engage in the gray zone tactics that work with less capable ships. They detect, they track, they engage, and they neutralize threats with the kind of efficiency that comes from spending billions of dollars on systems specifically designed to do exactly that. The Caribbean remained calm that afternoon. No sailors died. No ships sank. No international crisis ignited. Just one frigate limping home with expensive lessons learned, and one destroyer continuing her patrol, as if the entire incident had been a minor inconvenience barely worth noting in the log. If you found this breakdown valuable, hit subscribe and share this video. Your support brings more untold stories of modern military operations to light.